Good morning. Here's what you missed in the last 8 hours. You had 8 videos worth catching up on, covering everything from the massive AI model releases that dropped within 20 hours of each other, to OpenAI's new Workspace agents, plus some interesting developments in Xbox gaming and Australian EV adoption trends. The big story today was the AI arms race hitting a fever pitch. AI Explains presenter was genuinely excited, but maintained his analytical skepticism as he dove into what he called an unprecedented 20-hour period, where both OpenAI dropped GPT-5.5 and DeepSeek released their V4 model from China. He positioned this as OpenAI trying to maintain dominance against Anthropic, while DeepSeek represents China's answer to both. After days of testing, he said GPT-5.5 would become his daily driver, just edging out Opus 4.7, but immediately highlighted some concerning benchmark results. On SWE Bench Pro, which OpenAI had previously recommended as less contaminated, GPT-5.5 actually underperformed both Opus 4.7 by 6% and Mythos Preview by almost 20%. However, on agentic terminal coding, GPT-5.5 scored 82.7% versus Mythos Preview's 82%, though he emphasized this wasn't even the pro version coming to API soon. The presenter got particularly animated, demonstrating an adventure game he created in under 24 hours using GPT-5.5 and the new GPT Image 2, which scored almost 250 low points higher than previous models. What really caught his attention was the compute shortage theme running through everything. Bloomberg reported DeepSeek's V4 Pro has extremely limited service capacity due to computing crunch, and Anthropic faces similar issues. Meanwhile, Sam Altman and Greg Brockman repeatedly emphasized OpenAI's compute advantage, with Brockman actually laughing at Anthropic's compute conundrum. The presenter seemed somewhat frustrated with the inconsistent benchmark performances across domains, questioning what AGI even means given such disparities, but was clearly impressed by DeepSeek's cost efficiency at roughly 1/10 the cost of competitors. Speaking of GPT-5.5, OpenAI's own announcement was notably brief, but packed with practical enthusiasm. The presenter came across as genuinely impressed by efficiency gains they'd experienced firsthand, sharing a personal anecdote that really drove home the model's capabilities. They explained they'd been postponing creating an internal tool because they expected it would require days of work. But when they decided to tackle it using codecs powered by GPT-5.5, they completed it in under 1 hour. That's the kind of dramatic time reduction that gets developers excited. They emphasized that GPT-5.5 performs the same complicated tasks while using 56% fewer tokens than previous models, which translates directly to faster feedback for users due to reduced computational requirements. The presenter's tone conveyed pleasant surprise about how much faster development had become, speaking with the enthusiasm of someone who had personally benefited from these improvements. NVIDIA's AI researcher Shaunak Joshi brought even more enthusiasm to the GPT-5.5 story, describing what he called a magic moment of the AI's intelligence. Joshi spoke with the excitement of someone who'd experienced a breakthrough tool firsthand, particularly impressed by the system's creative problem-solving abilities. He provided a perfect example of GPT-5.5's enhanced creativity. When he asked it to help understand what research areas or experiments he could run based on existing work, instead of simply analyzing the work, GPT-5.5 suggested building a knowledge graph to visualize all the ideas within his files. That's the kind of intelligent problem reframing that gets researchers excited. Joshi described a 10x speed improvement in running experiments, with the key being the system's ability to handle end-to-end workflows, from finding research ideas to automatically writing scripts on machine learning infrastructure. He mentioned the system was actively refactoring his entire codebase while he went to get lunch, demonstrating its autonomous nature and practical utility in daily work. Moving into OpenAI's Workspace agents, Harsha walked through building a weekly metrics reporting agent with his typical calm, instructional approach. The demo showed how these agents connect to data sources like Google Drive, using what they call agent-owned connections that function like service accounts for integrations. What's clever is how Harsha described improving the agent by asking ChatGPT to make the process more reliable, rather than writing every instruction manually. ChatGPT responded by suggesting the creation of a metric standardization skill. These skills help agents follow team processes and best practices, making workflows more reliable because the agent isn't improvising each time. He set it up on a weekly Friday schedule with the simple trigger, Run Weekly Analysis, and showed how the activity history provides team visibility into the agent's work. In the specific run he examined, the agent looked at spreadsheet data, ran code to calculate metrics and create charts, then pulled everything together into a team readout. Horjan demonstrated another Workspace agent called Slate for software review processes, maintaining that same professional, matter-of-fact tone. Slate handles employee software requests by performing web research, checking approved software lists, evaluating signals across systems, and escalating to it when necessary. The live example he showed involved an employee requesting a high-quality video recording tool for DMOS through Slack. Slate researched the tool, compared it to similar software already in the approved stack, made a recommendation, and filed a Jira ticket since this particular request required IT support to provision additional seats. The value proposition he highlighted was handling high-volume, time-sensitive requests independently, saving time for it and procurement teams while preventing users from being blocked in their work. The third Workspace agent demo featured Hagen building Trove for third-party risk management, showcasing what he said was similar to OpenAI's own finance team agent. His professional, measured tone emphasized practical benefits as he walked through building an agent that automates vendor due diligence workflows. The build process involved creating a prompt with the agent's workflow, plus the specific tools, skills, and systems needed to operate effectively. What impressed him was incorporating the existing skill set the finance team already uses for vendor risk assessments, containing established best practices and metadata. Within seconds of providing the initial prompt, ChatGPT generated a comprehensive plan and began implementing it automatically. The interface split between natural language interaction on the left and automatic configuration on the right, producing fine-tuned instructions without requiring technical engineering resources. Trove gathers evidence from various sources, applies embedded skills to run thorough risk assessments, orchestrates work across multiple systems, and produces structured reports for human analyst review, completing in minutes what previously took significant manual effort. On a different note, Bellular took a measured but skeptical analytical stance on Xbox's recent announcements. He was clearly impressed with Xbox's PR execution, saying, "My God, they have played it well," but maintained healthy cynicism about corporate motives. Xbox announced Game Pass Ultimate would drop from $29.99 to $22.99 monthly, with Call of Duty games arriving a year later instead of day one. Bellular found this price drop suspicious since corporations rarely lower prices, especially after Game Pass had jumped 50% just 6 months earlier. Through leaked memos from new Xbox CEO Ashish Sharma, he revealed the real story. Game Pass had become too expensive, and Call of Duty's Day One inclusion reportedly cost $300 million to replace lost sales revenue. The timing made sense because Black Ops 7 performed much worse than expected in 2025, creating a double financial hit of paying $300 million while the game underperformed. Bellular noted this likely represents Microsoft reducing margin pressure on Xbox under Sharma, giving them breathing room after what sources called pushing Xbox to breaking point with previous 30% profit margin requirements. He got notably frustrated discussing Microsoft's past pressure, but showed genuine respect for Sharma's professional competence while refusing to buy into the new CEO saves the day narrative. Finally, Sam Evans from the Electric Viking brought passionate energy to analyzing Australia's EV adoption trends, despite clearly being exhausted and unwell after a difficult Milan trip. He became increasingly animated discussing how Australia could hit 80% EV market share by 2030, based on analysis by the Driven showing exponential growth patterns since 2010. Evans walked through the milestones. EVs first surpassed 100 sales annually in 2012, hit 1,000 in 2017, 17,200 in 2021, and 103,270 in 2025, with 2026 on track to double 2025's numbers. Extrapolating this pattern of sales growing by a factor of 10 every 4 to 5 years, he calculated over 1 million EVs could be sold by 2029 or 2030. He showed genuine frustration with conservative automotive journalists who he sees as anti-progress, comparing them to stubborn grandfathers resistant to new technology. Evans argued this media bias affects car reviews and challenged the narrative that current 100% plus growth is just driven by fuel costs from the Iran war, since EV sales were already up over 100% in early 2026 before any fuel price changes. Instead, he attributed growth to word of mouth, increased availability, better pricing, and social dynamics as EV ownership becomes more common and reduces perceived risk for new buyers. That wraps up a pretty intense day in tech. Between the AI compute wars heating up, OpenAI's push into workplace automation, and some interesting market dynamics in gaming and automotive, there's clearly a lot of transformation happening across multiple industries. Worth keeping an eye on how these trends develop.